So, good evening, everyone. I am Pınar Dinç Kalaycı from Gazi University. I'm the coordinator of Studio Think Imagine. And Studio Think Imagine this evening has been collaborated new what things, senses, well-being of people, authenticity, places, memory, and so on. We will be hosting people. We will continue this series of events, and we will be hosting people who have architecture or who have ideas about architecture in that manner. So you all welcome. And this night's guest is Evandro Schwalbach. He is from Cape Town. You welcome, Evandro.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a big pleasure. I think you have a presentation for us about yourself, about architecture, and how you consider architecture. I would love hearing it first. And for the people who are watching us, you can also ask questions by writing your questions to the chat section. At the end of Evandro's presentation, we can enlarge our interview in any subject. So you can start.
Okay.
Stage is yours, Evandro. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Pinar, and thank you everybody for inviting me and giving me the chance to be here tonight. um, the title of my presentation years, and now in the process of becoming a partner, and now in the process of changing the practice to a new name. So, but a little bit about myself. I come from Mozambique. I was born in Mozambique, so my main language is Portuguese. Mozambique was colonized by Portugal, and growing up, there were two really inspiring figures that really drew my attention, and in many ways, it also connects to, their work does connect to the way I think emotionalists do think and see the world. One is Pancho Guedes, and I'm sure lots of you know him. And the other one, maybe less known, is José Forjage, who actually was a key and instrumental architect post 1975 when Mozambique became independent from Portugal. Pancho kind of, he was an artist, he was a sculptor, he was an architect. He just knew no boundaries and didn't accept those boundaries, which is something that he always fought for, which is actually quite amazing because his buildings could be pieces of art, like it's depicted here, could be very serious architecture, but at the same time, there was always something more. There was always something sculptural, always something that made people, put a smile on their faces and kind of and yeah, his work was very evocative, and it kind of drew a lot of attention from me in terms of what kind of the work, what kind of architecture could be, and how could architecture, give to it, to the city and contribute beyond just being functional boxes, for people to live. So these are fewer examples of his architecture in Maputo, which is where I was born and lived for much of my time. This is the Smiling Lion. This was a kind of a building that kind of looks like an elephant, so it kind of has got this kind of strange form. It was a bakery initially. And then one of my favorites, which is the Sagrada Familia, which is a kind of a play in history and and in memory by using, it's almost like a modern Baroque building, and the form, it just has no boundaries. I mean, it almost like the plasticity and the kind of the creativity that Pancho used was kind of really evocative and really creative. Then we've got Fourgeage, who after 75, you saw in the beginning of, in the photo in the beginning, he was very friends with the president, Samora Machel, who was the first president after independence, and he was a socialist, and he was killed in an airplane accident, a bit controversial, but it happened, in the border between Mozambique and South Africa, and where that crash happened, Fourgeage designed this beautiful monument called Mbuzini. This was in 1986, which is one of the most beautiful pieces of architecture I know. And he kind of, it's a very poetic approach, and it kind of brings out a very strong sensory experience, because all these pipes are metal pipes, they have cuts at the top. And as the wind blows through them, there's a howl that almost looks like a cry, So by doing that, he invites the user to be part of that mourning effect to connect with the building, and to kind of and to think about what has happened and the repercussions of these actions. And then you can go inside, sort of underground, and then you have an experience of the museum, and you have some of the remnants of the airplane and things like that. But Fourgeage was a very resourceful architect. He worked under extreme lack of finance, and he tried to find poetics in using everyday objects, everyday materials, like in this church, for example, just bending metal sheeting just to create that really nice curve, and in this convent that he did, playing with light and color just to bring different kind of sensory experiences to the user. It was a really kind of, his work is really simple, but yet really, really, really powerful, and connects to the user, to humans in a very deep way. And then 20 years ago, I came to Cape Town, and I moved from Mozambique to Cape Town, and I did my master's in architecture in Cape Town, and then started working for Joe Noero. It was Noero Wolf Architects at that time, Joe and Heinrich, and then it became Noero Architects, and now, like I said, we're in the process of changing to Noero Schwalbach Architects. But when you move to Cape Town, as this image depicts, this is from the 1750 by a Dutch painter called Van Rijn, and you can't help it but just being overpowered by the mountain. Table Mountain, it's one of the wonders of the world. It's just amazing. It's so imposing that as an architect, you kind of really connect with nature and with landscape. Your work really becomes part of it. And I think that's one of the things that we see as being very strong in our kind of work. So this is our office. This is Joe Noero on the one side, and a lot of our architects, and myself on the other side. And this is it's one big space. We all see each other. We all work together, and the walls, we don't have space on the walls. The walls are full of models, and we love models. We find that we make them Most times we make them after the project has been completed, just as another kind of process of just capturing the idea and the essence of the project. That's why you'll find that, they're kind of very monochrome, very one material oriented, so as to kind of keep it abstract, in the realm of ideas. So and the way we kind of work is also quite interesting, because Joe still works by hand. He basically doesn't, he doesn't like the computer. So there's always this kind of back and forth process, which I think it starts with a lot of, intuition, from Joe's side, where, it's pen to paper, it's a thinking process. And then we all kind of, use the computer. Of course, we have to test things and do construction drawings and be accurate in all of that. But it's never a one process. It's a back and forth process. And we always find that, drawing is the unlocking of a lot of our problems, of a lot of ideas. You need these two processes, in collaboration with one another. So in going to sort of to the topic of this talk, what is an emotionalist approach to architecture? And in our website, when I was thinking about this talk, I looked at our website again, and just to see, okay, what is it that we believe in, right? And we have in our profile, in a statement, we have a statement that says architecture is a social art, and as such has the responsibility not only to be useful, to serve function and purpose, but also to be beautiful. So we believe in a human-centered architecture that engages body and emotion, which invites a dialogue between people, place, and time. And hopefully you can see that, present in our work that I will show soon. And I think that in our work there's always, these three main elements that is always present, which is, to evoke emotion. And we do that by using proportion, scale, light, and beauty. We always look to achieve those things. And, our work is always about creating connections through form and materiality, through memory and cultural context. We believe in linking individual and collective experiences, past and present, nature and the human hand. And then ultimately, I think our work is about inspiring human engagement. We design buildings that actually act as social catalysts. We believe in architecture that fosters interaction and creates, a sense of belonging and meaning, and it's part of a community. So I'm going to show four buildings, which I have been involved from the beginning to the end, and hopefully, these ideas can come through this work. So the first one is called the Life Center. It's located in an old farm. This used to be an old farm, and then it became a school. And that photo on the top there is an old farmhouse building that was converted into the school. It's now a school campus, and it was designed by a famous British architect called Sir Herbert Baker. And it's kind of part of heritage. And then the school campus has got haphazardly, a lot of school blocks. And the Life Center, and so we've made a couple of interventions. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse. Can you see my mouse? Okay. So we made a couple of interventions throughout the years in this school, where we create a resource and then another classroom block there. But the Life Center was a kind of a special building, because it was a building with no initial strong brief. The school it was in a period where the South African education system wanted to introduce grade R, which is just before grade 1, as mandatory to all children, so 5, 6 years old. And the school needed a bit more space, and they needed space, but they didn't know exactly what they needed for. So they gave us the site and they said, we need a building, or we need some space that can be used, for different kinds of practices around the school. So the building really came from kind of being wedged in between these school blocks. So geometry became quite an important factor here, because we ourselves, is how do we make this kind of space, in between two buildings, and how do we anchor it, So we decided to create this round building with a pyramidal roof. And then the in-between geometry play became an octagon. So then this idea of layering then emerged. So we used the breeze block around, so that we could control the elements and light and ventilation. And then we played with scale to kind of have this building that it sort of had a very strong presence on site. And then on the top, we put a lantern. So you can see it's a 2-story building. At the bottom, we put a softer floor, a rubberized floor, so that in case of winter, during rain, kids can actually bring some of the sports activities into this space as well. And then at the top, we put a hard flooring, and it became a preferred space to have plays and to have meetings, school meetings, student meetings, and to have all sorts of different activities around the school. We also gave a lot of, let's call it infrastructure to the building. We put a rail that then the students started hanging curtains so they could create different kinds of spaces. And then we gave it a kind of a nice deep volume so that the space and the acoustics could also work for a lot of different uses. So in a way, it was kind of like creating flexibility, doing a building that is flexible enough to spark imagination, to spark creativity. And in a way, kind of the process was inverted, whereas, normally you get a brief and you create the building to serve a purpose. Here, we kind of create a building and then purpose emerge out of that, which I think was a kind of a beautiful idea. So this is the building from the other side. On the ground floor, you can see it opens up to the outside. There were a couple of trees around it as well, and the breeze block became kind of this nice element that wraps around the building, sort of in a way very reminiscent to to architecture of Pancho and architecture in Mozambique, where kind of this modernist brise soleil from the tropics. So many references there. The second building is called Alfred Street, and this is an interesting also building because it kind of is a building that evokes memory and invites dialogue between the past, the present, and it's a building that was built in 1914. When Noero Architects was Noero Wolf Architects in 2004, they were asked to transform the building. It was originally a warehouse building, and they were asked to transform the building into an office building. And they did it by just extruding the mansard roof and adding more space. So the brick portion of the building has got a timber structure, and then the roof above, it became a steel structure with pre-cast concrete. And then in 2018, someone else bought the building and decided to convert into a hotel, which was kind of an interesting idea because it's just proof that buildings, can contribute towards this collective memory of the city. They kind of change uses over time, just become just really, this very strong, have a very strong presence in the city and change their uses over time in a kind of what we call a progressive heritage, intervention, basically. But what we decided to do is we decided to keep it original, to keep it honest, to showcase its imperfections, to showcase that the building is being added on at any stage. It can come back to its original form. So you can see when we converted into hotel rooms, we had to convert it into very, very tight hotel rooms. No two walls were the same. They were not parallel at all. And then we exposed everything that was original from the building. So in essence, every room became a different room. It was a kind of an architectural nightmare, but it meant that every room had its own identity. And the building could actually take anything. There's this kind of a new culture in South Africa about exuberant decoration. And we said, it's fine, the building can take it, because, you could have all these layers of, this popular culture, but, the building is still there and it's still alive, and it's still very, very present. So the corridors and the rooms became these kind of lower boxes, and then we exposed all the surfaces, and we expressed all the original structure of the building. So really try to understand that whatever is happening here is not permanent, that the building is actually the most, important thing. And some of the rooms became like this. They kind of have this old wooden structure that we just expressed in the middle of the room. And other rooms which were above in the metal were in a metallic part of the building, which was a newer section of the building, had this just perfect condition, these kind of perfect walls and all of that. So you could really book a room there, and you don't know what you're going to get, if you're going to get into a room which is really old or into a super modern room. And kind of experience something new every time you stay there. The next project is a project that was done in a place just outside Cape Town, about an hour's drive, and it's highlighted on the image on the left. It's a very interesting place because it's called Castle Rock because of all those rocks that are in the sea, and it's a famous kind of diving spot for divers because of those rocks and how they are located. There's a lot of interesting things to see if you're a diver there. So a lot of divers come specifically to this area just to see things that they can't see in any other part of the world. It's also apparently one of the parts that was kind of connected to Australia back, millions of years ago. So you'll find that the vegetation that appears in this area, it's kind of very similar to some of the vegetation in Australia, although the vegetation is kind of unique to Cape Town. It's called fynbos, which is a very typical vegetation. So this whole area was declared a nature reserve. So we had to undergo a lot of careful heritage studies and visual impact studies. And the one thing that we had to do, which we thought was a great idea, was to sink the house down so that from the road, the house doesn't spoil any of the views of the people driving by. What really was interesting about this house is that it kind of redefined what a house could be, because the footprint was only 110 square meters. And we really want to make the house part of the sea, part of the beach, and then the beach, and then bring the beach inside of the house. So we did a lot of careful studies and research on materiality to try to achieve that. And as well as we kind of try to blur all the boundaries between what is a room, does it have to be enclosed? Does it not have to be enclosed? So it's basically the house became just one big room, and kind of when you're there, it completely opens up it's completely enclosed, and it opens up towards the sea and towards the sky. So when there are really strong winds, you can close the front and then just open the roof, to the sky, so you still feel like you are outside. We decided to go for white concrete, and left it completely, bare, to kind of, to mimic this idea of beach sand. And even the walls, we just plastered the walls with white cement and left it like that, completely unpainted. So everything kind of has the same tones. From the outside, I think, the formal expression kind of was also very important, because, these arms that hold that sliding roof, some people said it almost looks like a person or a child with their arms back, sort of ready to jump into the water, which we thought was actually quite interesting, because these kind of connections, these kinds of creative imagination, I mean, that gets sparked by the form of the building. This is something that we aspire to, in our work. So this is the inside. It's basically a big open space. You enter from the top there where the door is into a gallery level. You go around and you come down into a big open space, which has got a dining room, a kitchen, living room, and a big fireplace. Or from the gallery, you go up and you've got 2 rooms. And this is the model as we did it. It's a sectional model, so you can see the spaces, but we had great fun. We had great fun doing models. And this is basically the 4th model that we did for this house, which is quite funny, because I think, we were never happy in the way that the model represented, this project. And it was such an important project that we kept on redoing it over and over, exploring different ways of representing it. Then the last project, I think we're doing fine for time. The last project is also a kind of a really nice project that talks about a connection between architecture and landscape and memory. This is a site 2 hours outside of Cape Town. It's called the West Coast Fossil Park, and it used to be a big phosphate mining place. And in the 80s and 90s, when there was a big mining company that was mining phosphates to be used as a fertilizer, and so that's why sort of the landscape has got these kind of scars. We call it scars because the levels are not the same. So all of these mounds are man-made. And as they were digging for phosphate, they discover a very, very rich fossil bed. The bed contained a lot of bones, and it was the most amazing thing, because it almost like, felt like the animals that were found there got trapped in this one location, and then over time they died. So and then one would be on top of the other. So there's kind of this layering, and then the deeper they go, the more animals they find. And one of the amazing animals that they found here, which is kind of unique, is the civithia. You can see the image below, an image below on the left. And the civithia was a short-necked giraffe, which is kind of, unique. It was found in India, but then it gets found here in, at the bottom of Africa, which was, we were quite surprised by it. So it's a very special site. And and to the left there is what we call the dig site, is where all those bones and all those fossils were found. And the cut in the landscape that you see over here is called a stratigraphy cut, and this is how we could measure how we were, how back in time we were going, so it became a kind of a very important timeline for us. And we decided to put the building not on top of this mount, but kind of in in between so that not to overpower the landscape, and continue that line across there for the user visitor. And so this used to be high, and we made that cut. So the idea was to bring the visitor back in time by lower them to that kind of level and compressing them, and then immediately opening into this big courtyard, which exposes you to this vast landscape. So really talking about taking people, into the past, right? And then from here, you have the visitor center. You could see the visual connection directly to the dig site, which is where visitors will end up going. But before that, they would be taken on this level, on this lower level, below the top of the hill, into the interpretive center, which is the main building right at the back there. And then from there, they would descend into the building and then exit through the basement and into this kind of level, actual dig site, and then walk their way all the way to the dig site. So this is a plan of the interpretive center, which is that far building on the image. And as you would enter, you would go through this made-up landscape, which was very, very tropical, which you can see at the top there, that replicated the vegetation that used to be there 5 million years ago. 5 million years ago is how far some of those fossils can be dated. So we wanted to represent that idea. And then you go through it, and then you enter through the building here, and then you get taken onto a time travel experience, and then you go to a main space, and then you descend into this big double volume space, which hosts a big diorama. And that diorama has the animals, the Civathea has a composition of animals in their natural habitat. And this was also, again, a really good experience because we work with an artist to depict those animals, and a lot of discussions were held on how to depict the animals. And we discover that actually a lot of the scientists, what they do in a lot of museums is represent the animals, but with information that they don't have. So we don't have the information of what the skin was like, or what color it was, or a lot of things. If it had dots, if it didn't have dots, if it had a pattern or no pattern. So together with a conversation with the artist, the artist decided, and we definitely agree that it was the right move, to have the animals depicted in a very abstract way. So we engage in this process very, very, with a lot of excitement, and we attended lots of these kinds of meetings and site visits where the artist grabbed a lot of, collected a lot of wood, a lot of driftwood, a lot of branches, and very carefully he kind of composed and put these animals together in a very evocative way that it kind of is very inspiring. And I think it leaves some of the questions open for the user and the visitor to use their imagination, which I think is one of the most powerful ideas, I think, in architecture. I think there's sort of this idea of not completing everything and let the visitor or the user actually complete the other kinds of the other kind of ideas, the other kind of things that buildings need, right? So this is what it looks like from the dig site, looking back into the interpretive center. To the left, that's where we took the visitors down into the courtyard, and then you walked in this covered walkway. There's a restaurant in the middle, and then you go past the restaurant into the interpretive center. as you walk around, there's a big window that again visually connects and reminds you where you're going to the dig site. And then as you go down to the main double volume space where the diorama is, and then you go further down into this kind of basement and you exit on grade, on level with the landscape, and then you have an experience walking all the way to the dig site. So those are the 4 projects that I wanted to introduce. And then I just wanted to finish with a side note on hand drawings, because I think you have seen from the presentation, we have a lot of hand drawings. The hand drawings that I show there are hand drawings done by Joe. And they're most amazing and powerful drawings, to communicate ideas. And I think there's a kind of an intuitive aspect to architecture that I think we definitely see a lot of architects and artists as well, kind of not making use of, and we kind of want to reinforce the need, and how I think, drawing by hand actually enriches your ideas on architecture, and as a tool for, for communication. So I put, I don't get to draw as much as Joe, unfortunately, but I do draw it. So I put some of the, of my sketches as well. This is an alteration that we did during COVID. It's a very small alteration. And it was just a really great exercise just to kind of to think using your hand. And also other projects. This was an attempt to do a small holiday house for myself. And then I discovered that I actually didn't have the money to do it. So it just became an exercise, nevertheless. And then this is just a series of evolutionary ideas from another house that never happened. It started with a little kind of small section, and it became two buildings with a courtyard, and then it just became this idea of a house that just links across 2 hills, and then the cars get parked underneath. And that's our office again, and that's it. So I think I'm just before 40 minutes, which I think that was the time that I had.
Oh, thank you. It was very enjoyable to listen to you. I mean, if you would like to talk 40 more, we are ready for it. And there are also some questions. I'm reading them. Thank you very much for preparing this presentation for
It's a
us.
pleasure.
First of all, yeah, it's a pleasure for us to know the architecture of a different country, a different culture. I will explain why I say it to different, but I think what you underlined a few things that I would like to talk about first. First of all, hand drawing. This is very, I think, important nowadays because people are dealing with the AI and some other BIM and other issues. Yes, they are valuable too if you are following the real world. If you are constructing something, you have to do it properly, that's fine. But I think the hand drawing is very essential for connecting your mind, connecting your heart, and connecting your hand. Uh, would you agree with that? I mean, would you emphasize a little bit more on that? What happens when you are drawing with your hand? Why don't you start with a program just like a Revit, just like other thing, Someone is asking, I'm curious about the rendering workflows. So, which software did you use? Thanks. Instead of software, you're using your hand drawing. You are preferring it. Could you make the comparisons, please? Which one
Yes.
you use it for? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is a topic. This is a very interesting topic, and it's kind of a conversation that we have almost daily in our office as well. But I think part of architecture, or or the work of an architect or an artist, is intuition.
Mhm.
We call it intuition, but it's actually knowledge that is within ourselves, but we need to channel it somewhere, and somehow, writers write, architects and artists, they draw. And I think, I always find it interesting because writers don't write immediately, a book nonstop, or a page, without actually going back and forth, editing, rethinking, and going through that process. And I think drawing by hand does that. You have that control, you have that, dare to say, inaccuracy, to to always go back and improve, whereas the computer is very accurate, and there's no two ways about interpretation of the lines that you draw. So that line is drawn at a scale. It's drawn. It's very accurate, and it starts and it ends in a very precise point, which is, I think, why we prefer to use it as a final kind of drawing, as a constructive kind of drawing, as drawing that communicates another level of information. But the drawing that we use in the beginning of the process, or when we kind of trying to represent ideas, I think the hand still allows for that freedom. It allows for interpretation, and it's a process, and that process sometimes changes from what you thought originally, just by drawing it. We have a lot of discussions at in the office, where we looking at something, and we're discussing, what if we do it this way? Maybe we should do it that way. And Joe always says, why don't you draw it, and then we'll talk about it. And then when you draw it, you change, your perception changes. It's either for the better, or for the worse, but the process needs to happen. Um, and I think that's the one thing, that we shouldn't be slaves of the computer. I mean, there's a time and a moment to use it, the renders and all of that. It's about communicating an idea, often to a very specific set of people. But I think, for us, I think still, we mustn't lose that communication tool, which is the hand drawing. Pancho used to redraw his buildings even after the buildings had been built and done, and still make changes, because he thought he thought the drawing is the perfect representation of the building, not the built building. The built building is full of inaccuracies, full of changes made by the client, and so on and so forth. Whereas the drawing represents the true original building, which I always think that's kind of an amazing way of seeing it.
Yes, I agree with that. Drawing and the architect has more connections, has deeper connections than the architect and the real building.
Yeah.
Yes, I can imagine that. I agree with that. And also, I'm very surprised that you do your most of your models after the building is built or the
Yes.
project is completed. We
Yes.
use modeling as a way of sketching, just like what drawing is the same, maybe with the modeling itself, because your hands work, your this time you have the environment, and as you touch things with all your hands, fingers, you use the glue, you cut something, you get more into the topic, into the architecture, into the form, into the life. into the space, into the ground, into the levels. So, why do you do it, or why do you emphasize doing it after the project is finished? They look amazing, by the way. They have
Thank you.
same nature, same mood. They look amazing. But why is it is done, especially after the project is completed? I wonder.
So I think the model for us, when I say after it's completed, it's not necessarily when the building is built, but when the project is kind of to a stage of resolution, then the next stage is to build. That's when we start making the majority of our models. We do sometimes do it, before to test ideas, but those are very rough models and working models, whereas these ones are kind of final models. It's almost done in a way of a confirmation. A confirmation that the building is kind of, or the design is kind of complete. There's no changes. So we do it almost in a kind of, for ourselves, first of all, we do it for ourselves. And we do it, and if we're happy, then we know that there are no changes. But often in that process, because it kind of becomes a project in itself, right? We have to think about how we're going to model. We have to think about how we're going to cut it, how we're going to change the model, how we're going to represent it. Some are sectional, some are kind of, solid at a different scale, some are more detail oriented. So it's almost like a confirmation that the project is actually, that we're happy with the project, that there are no changes. But most of the times we end up making small changes because of the process of building the model unlocks other ways of seeing the project. And we often end up, if we're already on site, we end up, making certain revisions. If we are about to go out to site or about to go to tender, with a builder, then we end up kind of, making those changes before we actually start construction, So it's that process. I think the best description I can use is just almost like to comfort ourselves that the building has been well resolved, that we're happy with the building, that everything makes sense. That's what I would say.
Okay, thank you for the accurate explanation. I also enjoyed your spaces, the spaces you created, especially the school, the first example you showed us. I think you gave them a very valuable space in which they would improvise using a space. I think this is very important when you are a child, being able to change a space, transform a space, play with a space, play in a space. These are all very important things, and this should be given to a child when he or she is a child. Otherwise, they start to do it as they get old, and if they're architects, we are lucky, but if they're not, this becomes an unluck for everyone. The second example was also a very interesting, that it turned out that each room was different than the other. This is also a very nice experience, but as a customer, I wouldn't, shall I be aware of it? Next time, if I visit the building, I will have, I might have, I may have definitely a different room, a different size, different decoration, different
Yes.
place. Do they know it?
No, they
Do they
don't. They don't.
understand it? Okay.
I don't think they knew it. I
Uh,
don't think they know it. And also what was quite interesting is that we made the rooms had to fit in between the structural grid. So
yeah.
some of the rooms on the one side became very tight and long. So we put two beds,
Mm-hmm.
and the idea, what we could only make the room work by entering, most hotel rooms, you enter through a passageway, you've got your bathroom and your bedroom. We had to deconstruct that idea. We had to make
Mm-hmm.
the user enter through the bathroom or through this space that had a wash and basin on the side, and then your shower and your loo on the one side, because there was not enough space. So the room really kind of became just long and narrow. In some rooms you would get two beds, and some rooms you get one bed, and the hotel owner charged the same rate for the rooms. So you could, yeah, so you could select on your booking system, you could select if you wanted each one of those. So they had images. I suppose you could choose because you had images of the rooms you were going to get, right? But it was a good experience for us also to have some feedback, because some of the smaller rooms, once you know that you get the bigger rooms with two beds, then everybody wants those rooms.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the third example was also very interesting. Three different layers on top of each other. That's what I felt when I saw the facade of it, and also inside as well.
Mm. Mm.
This is kind of sustainability, isn't it? It's not only preserving a building, but also by putting something on it, you just extend its life, you just extend its atmosphere, interior. Could you explain it more, please? I mean, three times or three layers living together in a building.
Are you talking about the house, the
Yeah,
Castle Rock house?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean the house is one big space,
Hmm.
right? And and um
No,
and
no, it
yeah.
wasn't the house. It was one before the house. It
Oh,
was
you're talking about the hotel then? The hotel.
no, something in between. Could you please go back to, yeah, not this one. Not this one.
This
Ah, it
one?
was the hotel.
It was the hotel.
I see. I see. I see.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
the
Sorry.
hotel that
Oh,
it was
sorry.
altered three
Mhm.
times
Uh-huh.
in its life, and it's a building
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
1914. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I see.
This
No,
building was used.
it's a very interesting example of sustainability. This is also
Yeah,
cultural heritage, but you
correct.
can turn it to a very, very different thing in the end. Yeah. This is very surprising. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. There are
That,
some
that,
questions also.
mm.
For instance, there was a nice one here from Göksu Günay Öğüt, my colleague. Do you have the chance to assess your buildings in terms of human centricity and emotional connection after they are built? Do you get feedback about this? How people feel about your
Yes, we
building?
do.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. We do. And I
Mhm.
think we pride ourselves, of that, because I think we remain, in South Africa, we have a contract system that when the building is done, you deliver the building, and then the builder has got almost 1 year of fixing little things and little problems and things that appear and all of that. I'm not sure how it works in Turkey, but so during that time, you remain in contact, you remain, with the user, with people, you remain, in contact with the builder. So you really get to experience the building as it gets used. And I think one of the interesting things about that process is that you do get to see your building being used, how people react to it. And I think we're not the kind of architects that are very precious about their space. If people come in and then they change it, we think the message we get is that our spaces need to be robust enough to actually take that change. and not depend on how you furnish the room, or not depend on how people change its orientation or anything like that, but actually, allow for that, allow for things to change and be robust enough to take that change. So that's why I think, in a way that we detail our buildings, we're not very precious. You use common materials, we use everyday materials, and we're not kind of, Joe always says that, he hates that saying that God is in the detail. He hates that because he thinks, um, that the detail, although is important, it shouldn't make the architecture. It shouldn't be so precise and so meticulous that if you don't have it, or if something changes, then the whole building collapses, or the whole idea collapses. And I think buildings should be much more robust than actually relying on small little details of how materials, come together and things like that. I think that's a luxury that we don't have, and we don't really want to have. We're not really interested in that.
What happens if a client wants to make a very weird change that you would not like to agree with? Because sometimes it
I
might
think
happen.
like all architects, we first reject,
Mhm.
reject, but we we always remind ourselves that actually the building is not ours. The building belongs to
Mm.
the client, and they're
Yeah.
entitled. And most of the times we reluctantly do that change, but we see a new opportunity.
Mm.
And it's amazing, but it's a really nice question, but it's always the same process. First, you kind of reject because you're too emotionally attached to what you've done. And then you accept it, and then you embrace it, and then it generates a better opportunity. And what we find is that it opens up new doors to actually making the building different and better.
Okay, thank you.
Mm.
Also, Natasha is with us, and she's wondering that she says, I'm curious in how much your clients were interested in the emotional and human-centric aspect of the projects. Did you talk to them about these aspects as part of the process?
So that's a good question. I
Or
think
was it a surprise for them?
yes, it depends on the client. I
Ah,
think I think that um, I think there is architecture for us and there's architecture for the client. And sometimes when there's a good client, those two become the same. There's I think that for some clients, we avoid talking about, deep architectural ideas and deep architectural questions, just because they're not that type of clients. And we try, or always, of course, but if we see a kind of a resistance, then I think it becomes our own quest, our own ideas that we, pursue, without actually, obviously without compromising what they want as well. But there's always this kind of, I think the best clients are the ones where that they are open and engaged in talking about some of these ideas. And I think the product in the end is always the best, the better product, I would say. I don't know if you
yeah,
find the same.
yeah. Thanks to
In your
them.
role.
Thanks to them, they make these beautiful architectures possible. Uh,
Yes, exactly.
yeah, yeah. And also,
Exactly.
my colleague Elif Bulut is asking, what is your individual definition of beauty in emotionalism, in relation to
Mhm.
emotionalism manifesto? In aesthetic philosophy, the beauty has no any clear definition. Yeah, it has some personal individual definitions, but not agreed on maybe.
Mhm.
And she thanks for this presentation. So, what is beauty in terms of emotions and emotionalism?
It's a
This
it's
is a
a
very hard question.
it's a very hard question, but I mean, I agree. Beauty is one of those things. I mean, if you look in philosophy, it changes over time. it at one stage was associated to purpose and use, and at some stages it was disassociated to it. At one stage, in philosophy, there's kind of an agreement that beauty is about, a collective understanding. And so it's really difficult to say, but I think for us and in architecture, there are certain elements that are part of beauty, but they're not actually measurable. They're not quantifiable. If we talk about things like proportion, you could argue it. Mathematically, you could argue that good proportion, the golden ratio, this and that and the other. But when you talk about emotions, it's a very difficult thing to define and to quantify and to measure. But I think that it's still present, and it's about the feelings that you can actually generate. And I think human beings in general, maybe some less than others, would agree on a kind of a feelings, that kind of a space or an architecture can generate. And I think beauty comes from that. It comes from composition. It comes from proportion. It comes from good spaces related to purpose, use, and to proportion. I mean, all these things I think are all part of it. But I don't think there's a formula. I don't think there's one precise way of defining it. But I think beauty are all those things, when they come together, when there's when there's purpose and there's something that goes beyond purpose. I think and when a space is connected to emotion, some kind of positive emotion, I think that's when we achieve beauty, in my view.
Yes, thank you. I also
sorry, and just to say, I this philosophically speaking, there's also a definition of beauty that I kind of like, which is about perfection, something that comes as close to perfection as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But however, there's no such thing,
Sure.
So in human beings, for example, or in architecture, at one stage we did discuss symmetry as being one of the elements to measure. In human beings, we know that we look the same, but we actually not exactly symmetrical. So I think striving to that kind of perfection, I think it's a very important aspect of achieving beauty as well.
Okay, thank you. Also, I want to go back to the house by the sea.
Can I just switch on my light here?
Please.
It's getting a bit dark.
It's becoming evening, I suppose.
It's becoming evening, yes.
Okay. It was also very beautiful, and it was very interesting that there is only connection with the sea and only connection with the sky.
Correct.
So why did you limit the building's view with these two? You just wanted to concentrate on these two issues, or what made you give these decisions?
Well, I'm trying to see if I can find a very good image. I don't have a very good image of you could see maybe from the aerial here. There's a few houses in this area, and you can see from the photo there's a small little bungalow on the left-hand side. And then next to the house, there's a parking space, and then there's another house. So it was very important for us to kind of try to make the house private and only have this strong connection with the beach and the sea. So the house, the site is very small, and if we had a lot of openings, I think, privacy would become an issue. And it was a sort of also a kind of a space that was very very, very poetic, very dramatic, because whenever you are in this house, your connection is always towards the sea, and you can see from these spaces, because the house is very, very spacious. We decided just to keep all the walls, to keep the walls solid, so we can have all the wall space that we can for different purposes. So I don't have image of the bathrooms, but the bathrooms are located on the top corners of the 2 bedrooms. It only has 2 bedrooms, and then on the corners on the side, those are the bathrooms. Let me just see this image. Yeah, so you can see here the corners are curved, and they're curved glass. So we open up the corners also where we've got the bathrooms to the views.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, there are more openings. Okay. Thank you. And Nisu Yolcu wants to know more about your sketching process. I think this is an important and nice subject. Do you first think and observe and then start drawing, or do you create them all together as a sequential presentation? I mean, do you draw for deciding on things, or do you just observe, you decide, and then you draw? What is the sequence, or you don't know what happens when you're drawing?
It depends on the mood.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
No, but I
Because your
think
sketches were very, very clean, as if they were finished work. Yeah, very clean.
I mean the drawings on the right-hand side are obviously a cleaning version. The drawings on the left are a thinking process.
Okay.
So there's obviously a bit more lines. There's a lot of indecision, a lot of uncertainty, and I think that's what the initial sketches should be, or should have. There's always a degree of uncertainty, and that kind of it's a process of you satisfying yourself and becoming comfortable with yourself so trial and error until you actually satisfy yourself that after you've drawn a couple of times over, you actually can't see any other way of drawing it. So when you start repeating your own lines and the new line goes over the same lines, then you kind of get that kind of confirmation that you've convinced yourself that this is the right way to go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And how did you come across with the emotionalism?
Sorry, can you repeat?
How did you come across with the emotionalism, with the emotionalists, with the emotionalist movement? How did you get to know it? You
Sorry,
saw it in the
your line is
LinkedIn?
breaking up a little.
Oh,
The
sorry.
line is breaking up a little bit.
Is that clear now at the moment?
Yes, I think
Okay.
it's better now.
Yeah, okay, thank you. How did you come across with emotionalism?
So how did I come across
Yeah.
emotionalism?
Yes,
That was the
through
question.
LinkedIn, through what? Through friends?
So I think the specific word emotionalist came from a connection from ZYSO and conversations and meeting with him, and I think it was probably intrinsic in us and in our work, but not necessarily conscientious about it in the way of using that word, in the way of kind of looking at a very specific meaning to it. It was kind of intrinsic in the work, and I think when we met with ZY and we started having these kinds of conversations, it became apparent, at least to me, that this is actually exactly what we're talking about, is exactly what we also believe in. Not necessarily in, using those kinds of words or expressing those ideas in that way, using emotionalism. But certainly we share those values. We share the values of what we see important in architecture and in our work as being the same values of emotionalism.
Okay, so it is the friendship that started it, made you think about emotions and emotionalism, and you find out that, yes, I'm already doing it.
True.
Yeah, so thank you very much for joining us tonight. I think this is very important to know people and how they do what they do, because there are many common issues. In fact, we feel the same. We do the same. Maybe forms are a little bit different because you are from another culture, somebody else is from another culture, but we all work for good architecture, a human-centric architecture, an architecture that would make you feel good to be part, to be in, to be lived with. So we are all looking for the same thing. And thank you very much for your generous presentation, explaining it in detail, how you reach to it, how you approach to it, and how you obtain to that level. Do you have some final words to say to, especially to students who would like to be future emotionalists?
If I understood your question correctly, the internet is breaking a little bit on my side, but
Okay.
you asking if I have anything to say to the students who would like to pursue
Yes,
this kind of
yes, yes,
emotionalism.
that was the most
Yes,
important
yeah,
part. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Well, I think in a way, I really believe this. In a way, if you're an architect, you are an emotionalist, or at least I think if an architect or an artist, I think you should be, if not a lot, a little bit at least, because I think the values that emotionalism strives for are the values of being human, really, and being an architect and an artist and about engaging with the world, So I really think that that's something that everybody should be aware of and should connect with, because at the end of the day, I think being connected to the emotional world, being connected to these kinds of values that emotionalists believe in, does make you a better human being in general. Not only about architecture, but a basic human being. And I think we need that in the world today. I mean, when we look at what is happening around the world, the war, kind of the economy, or what drives human beings, or where energy is being spent in terms of technology. I mean, we have to ask ourselves why, what for, and what is the purpose, I'm not one to reject technology. I love technology, but technology that is done, with a purpose to serve us and kind of to make our lives a little bit easier. I also believe that it shouldn't be that easy. There's there's certain things that are not meant to be easy, and there's certain things that, they're not meant to be done by intellectual minds or by artificial intelligence, minds. We've got a mind of our own, so we should be able to use it and not rely on other intelligent beings to do it for us. So I think that's a dangerous thing that is happening in the world. So I would say to students, be careful where using artificial intelligence and using technology might make some of your work go quicker, or might kind of make things easier for you. Sometimes the path of more resistance is the one that makes you learn the most.
Yes, it was a good lesson. Thank you very much. Very good final words,
Thank
especially
you.
putting the reality of AI, which is trying to dominate our daily lives, which is trying to dominate every profession, and also any moment of life. If you open your cell phone, then okay, you are collaborating, you are working with, you are living with your AI in your hands. Yes, we have to open place for our own souls, and space should help us for this. I think your spaces are such a kind that human being can listen to his or her own mind, heart. Thank you for creating these spaces, and thank you for sharing the background of all these design processes with us. It is very, very valuable. And for the ones who would like to know more about emotionalism, they can look at its website, The Emotionalists, and also they can check it they can follow in the LinkedIn. It's the same, The Emotionalists. And I'm so happy meeting you through the Zoom. I hope we shake hands one day too. And I would like to see you in our school too. Please consider coming to Turkey, not once, many times. Thank you for being with us this evening. This
Thank
was
you.
very
you.
high quality architecture.
Thank
We
you so
saw.
much. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
a
for the
lot,
kind
Evandro.
words, and thanks for inviting me again. And thanks everybody who for entertaining me, on your busy lives. And I hope it was good, and I hope you could take something from this. I mean, I myself kind of, just this process and this conversation already feel much energized, and already with lots of ideas that made me think. So I think that's one of the important things. It's just making us think and look at our own work, and be inquisitive about what is it that we do and why. I think those are the things that I think this kind of platform really is good for, I think.
Yes, we are intellectual human beings, and we are emotional human beings. We should never forget this. Thank you very
True.
much,
You so much.
Thank you.
everyone who joined us as well. And
Hocam, I need to take screenshots because, as you know, our
oh, okay,
school
photo.
needs some
Okay,
proofs for events. So I need to took a
okay,
screenshots, and
okay.
I invite everyone to open their cameras if they want.
You want
Okay.
with me with my glasses or not? Okay,
Whatever you wish, hocam.
okay.
Okay, smile. One more for guarantee. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you a
you.
lot.
Bye-bye.
See you. Good night. Good night, everyone.